Hello, everybody. This is Ishan. Good evening. We have started streaming on YouTube as well, and we'll just wait for a couple of minutes for everybody to join, and then we'll begin with the session. Thank you all for joining. Um, just have a little bit more patience while everybody joins, and then we'll continue. All right. Good evening, everybody. Once again, it is officially 5:30. We have to start our stream right now. So, just like last time, the first thing that we're going to do is I share my screen. We'll discuss a little bit of stuff regarding our agenda for the day. And in case you have any questions, we will take those as well. Just give me a minute. All right. So, I hope my screen is visible. You can type in the chat and let me know, or if you're in the live stream, you can type there as well. Am I audible to everybody? All right. So the screen is visible, and we will move on with discussing the fundamentals of today's session, what we're going to discuss. The first thing that we need you to know is if you have any questions regarding the previous session, yesterday's session about Kotlin fundamentals while solving the practice problems through Kotlin. If you have any questions, we'd like to take them right now. Yes, Siddharth. If you have any questions, please let me know. Let me know either in the Q&A section, the general chat. All right, all right. Since there are no questions right now, we will continue with the rest of this. During the session, of course, if you do happen to remember any question that you had before or some new question arises, we will take them, just post them in the Q&A section or post them through the live stream on YouTube, and we'll take those up. So let's get into the Android Basics with Compose course. Today we are going to discuss again Unit 1, Pathway 3. If you remember last session, we had discussed that Android Studio, the setting up process was mentioned in Pathway 2, and I requested all of you to set up Android Studio following the entire process for your operating system on your computer. And if you've done that, it will be a very streamlined process today because there are a few activities that we'll be doing which require you to use Android Studio. So first of all, let's have a brief introduction about Android Studio as well. If you open up your Android Studio, this is the screen that you'll see at first. Of course, this is when you open it up with a project beforehand. So a default project that you create will look like this. And this contains different sections, as you can see. There is the left pane, which enlists all the project directory. There are multiple formats of the project directory as well, which we will discuss. If you have gone through the entire pathway of Android Studio installation, you would probably have gone across the, happen to come across the different sections as well and different arrangements that Android Studio provides you of the project directory structure. There is an Android style arrangement, which is grouping together the similar files, and there is a system file arrangement, which is a real depiction of what exactly is stored in which place on your physical system. So there are two arrangements that we might be dealing with, and whenever you do get confused or are not able to find a file where it should be, just check in the top left what kind of directory are you looking at. Are you looking at the Android directory or are you looking at the project directory? And that might actually solve some of your problems. I'll just have a look at the stream. There are no questions. That's great. We'll move ahead. So on the right side, the majority of your screen would be covered by an editor for your code. So this is where we will be writing code, we'll be testing things out, we will be essentially, this is where we will work with all of our data for our Android applications. On the top corner of this code view or the code tab, you will find three options. One is a code, one is a split option, and one is the design option. So if you go ahead and click on the design option, it will take you to a design view, which will essentially give you a preview of your Compose application. Now, you must pay attention. If you choose a template, an Android template, apart from Jetpack Compose, you might not find this design view. You might only find the two code and split views. That is because the design tab is actually a facility which is provided through the Jetpack Compose previews. These are actually a very, what can we say, experimental arena in which uh, less impactful or lightweight previews of what your application will look like are generated without actually having to install the application on a virtual device like an emulator. So this is where you will get a rough preview of what your application would look like. And of course, this split view will always be available in all kinds of Android projects. This is where your emulator comes in. Of course, you can choose to keep your preview. As you can see, default preview has been written there. In the code as well, you can see there is a default preview section. So that is what the function default preview is being run in that right side pane. That is what you'll most probably be using throughout this session, so that you get an overview of all three or at least two of these directories, the project directories. So let us move ahead and start discussing what functions do in Android Studio and how do we deal with them. So of course, we see that there are a few declarations. On top of the function, we have @composable. This is a special declaration used for Jetpack Compose. Do not worry if you don't know what this is. We will be discussing that today itself. Then, of course, last session we had learned about fun, the keyword fun, and it is followed by the function name, the parameters that it takes, and then the function definition. Similarly, you create a set of other functions which can be brought together in a default preview. First, we'll be looking at the details of the greeting function that we have created over here. So let's go ahead and look at that. We write @composable, which we'll be discussing the meaning of soon. There will be function, the keyword. There will be a greeting, that is the name. It takes the parameter called name, which will be a string. This is information for the machine to understand. Then what we are doing is we are calling another function inside the function. And this function is called text. What this essentially does is it tells the machine, Android, to generate a text display on screen. And you pass the parameter text is equal to howdy $name. So dollar here, as we had discussed in the previous session, refers to a string template. That's what we have done over here, and that won't be a problem ahead because we'll be using that a lot. So this is the output that you get from the greeting function. There are other functions as well, just like this one. The default preview function that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. You may notice that there is another @ apart from composable on top. So this is the preview annotation. And this is required so that the machine understands, okay, this function goes into the design tab. It is not just a simple function that the user will be calling within an application. This function needs to be associated with Android Studio itself, not just our code. So let's go ahead and have a look at the details. Of course, the inside of the function works exactly the same as every other function. You can call other functions inside, you can declare variables, you can do other stuff. That won't be a problem at all. Just like here, we have called the greeting function within default preview. All right. So in by combining the greeting function with the default preview function, we get the design tab. The design tab, which displays the default preview containing the output of the greeting. So that is how this is arranged. So I had spoken about a virtual device a few minutes ago, and that is what we'll discuss now. This is also known as an Android emulator. An Android emulator is something that simulates an actual device without having to physically connect a device to your system. It has different levels of API, so you can choose which kind of Android API you want to work with, whether you want to work with Android 5, that is Lollipop, or you want to work with the latest version, that is Android 12 or 13. You can choose on your own and configure it without having to actually use a physical device. This is a very powerful tool that Android Studio provides you with, and we will be using it to test our applications towards the end. Most of the visual testing will happen through the default preview function, but once you need to you think that your application is complete, it is highly recommended that you go through the actual emulator to understand how the application looks on a physical mobile device. So how do you exactly create an emulator? Even though we have discussed this in pathway 2, we'll just have a brief look at it. There is a panel known as Virtual Device Manager. So you can go into your Android Studio, select a virtual device manager, choose what type of virtual device do you want. Do you want a TV, a phone and tablet, a Wear OS device, or a vehicle, an automotive? Of course, for our purposes, we will be developing applications for mobile phones, so we choose phones. And here we get to choose what is the highest or the latest version of Android that we want our phone, our application to be compatible with. Be careful, this is not the minimum possible version. This is the libraries which you want to work with. The project itself, before choosing an emulator, while declaring the project, you will get an option to choose another Android API level. In that, you will have to choose what kind of compatibility do you want to have. Like, if you choose while creating an object, Android API level 5, for example, Lollipop, that will give you an estimate like 98.8% of all Android devices will be compatible with whatever application you create. That is the meaning of this. However, while choosing an emulator, that is a different case. It is like this device that you are creating will have a certain version of Android installed on it. That is what we will be choosing in an emulator. That is different from your project directory. So you don't have to worry about those two being the same thing. You just have to worry about choosing what is best for your application. Now, after you have done that, you will be led through a series of API selections, which you can go through. Of course, we will be using a stable version of the API, that is API S. After we have selected everything, we can go ahead and press next. There are a few configurations which you can do. If you'd like to do them, feel free to explore. We won't be going into that right now. And then you can create your virtual device. Moving on, if you want to actually use a physical device, you can also do that through the device manager. There are different steps which are given on the Pathway 2 website as well. So if you do not have a system that allows you to run both Android Studio and the emulator simultaneously, you can opt for a physical device. You will have to enable USB debugging on that device, and then you can connect your device to the laptop which you're working through a USB cable and install whatever application, Android application you're making on that device to test it. So now we are done with the studio part of the session. I hope all of you have downloaded and installed Android Studio and explored a little bit, created a temporary project at least, and interface. Let us get started with today's content. All of you go ahead and visit this link where we'll be going through the Android Basics with Compose pathways. So this is the link. Let me just type that in the chat as well. And okay, Prashant, you wanted me to repeat something. I'm sorry, I did not see that. Which part did you want me to repeat? All right. You've already understood. I'm sorry that I did not see that on time, but thankfully you've already got it. So just visit this link. We'll be starting off with today's pathway. I'll be sharing my screen again. All right. Just type yes in the chat box if the screen is visible. I hope it is visible because I can see the message popping up. Yeah. Thank you so much. So let's dive into today's session. So what exactly is this Jetpack Compose that I've been talking about for the past few hours? Jetpack Compose is a modern toolkit for building Android user interface. Before, we used to build user interfaces using something known as XML, Extended Markup Language. Of course, in today's date as well, you are free to use XML. Nobody is stopping you from using XML. The only thing is that there are a lot of resources and values that you need to take care of while handling XML. There are so many variables that it is prone to errors. To ease that or to reduce those errors while handling these many variables, we have introduced something called Jetpack Compose. With Compose, you can build your UI by defining a set of functions, as we have discussed previously, called composable functions that take in data as variables and will produce user interface elements. To illustrate some important concepts, we will go through a short code demo as well, and then we'll get working on a small Android application towards the end as well. So I discussed about composable functions just now. Let's get into the details of that. A composable function is the basic building block of user interfaces in Jetpack Compose. It will describe some part of your user interface. It does not return a value. You might have studied in other programming languages that, okay, some functions are supposed to return a value. Like in C language, you always write int main or void main, and then you write a return 0 at the end of it. Or probably in Python, you write function add, you put an arrow mark on the right side, and then you'd say, okay, this add returns an integer, this add returns nothing. You can even return nothing as a value. That will be none or null, depending on what language you're working with. And in Kotlin and Android, if you want to return nothing, you actually return a class called unit. However, a composable function does not actually return anything at all because its return type is predetermined by Compose itself, which will be a UI element. So you cannot return anything apart from a UI element. So Let us have a look at the greeting function that we had seen a few minutes ago. Of course, we again see that it has at composable mentioned on top of it. If you've worked with Java on a professional level, you would have come across the @ notations in some places. So what this actually means is you're telling both the integrated development environment as well as the reader that, okay, this function has a special meaning. Apart from Jetpack Compose, there are other annotations. We call these annotations. There are other annotations in the Java language as well. You come across an annotation called @override. This is when you're implementing interfaces in Java and you need to redefine some functions. So you write @override on top of some functions. Here we are writing @composable because you need to tell the compiler that this following function needs to be treated as a part of Jetpack Compose only. Going ahead, you of course need to remember the most fun part of Kotlin, that is fun, function, the keyword, followed by the name of the function, which will essentially give you a hint towards what this function does. All right, Sahil has asked us a question. What do you mean by a UI element? A UI element means a piece of user interface. You see my screen right now, right? So everything that has been written on my screen is made up of UI elements. The word greeting followed by brackets, that is a text UI element. The background that you see, the blue background, that is also an image UI element, user interface element, different parts of which our screen is made up of. Is that out solved, Sahil? All right, we'll wait for Sahil to get back. Till then, we'll get towards discussing the rest of the function parts. Like before, we had discussed greeting function and most other functions do take some values which will be substituted later on within the body of the function. Here we are taking in a value called name. This will be the memory box that we had discussed in the last session. And we are telling the compiler that whatever value we assign to this memory box called name should be a string. So you are supposed to check whether it is a text value or not. Then within the greeting function, oh yeah, this is also an important part. You actually need to give a space between the two declarations. You can either put a white space or an enter. And then one important part is there is no return type. I'm stressing on this again. You cannot explicitly define a return type for composable functions. Then within the curly brackets, the scope of the function, as we call it, we allow Compose to generate UI elements. Here we are generating a text element that will be placed somewhere on the screen. All right, so now that we have understood the basic structure of a composable function, let's have a look at one, what can I say, a demo application. This is the application that we'll be working with through the PowerPoint presentation. It is a pet adoption application screen, and we'll look at how this application is built through this presentation. So the first thing that we need is, of course, as we can see, the name of the pet. So we will define a function which will, of course, be composable because we are working with Jetpack Compose, and we will call this function pet name. Within pet name, since the function name suggests that this is going to be some kind of word that identifies the pet, we need a string value. So strings will be displayed through the text function. Now the text property takes in a string. Here we have written Bark, my name is Koda. So this helps us understand the name of the dog is Koda, and Essentially, it is introducing itself. Now we have defined the composable function pet name. We will also have to define the default preview. And this preview will contain the function call for all the functions that we need to display on our interface. So if we have a pet name function and we want to display it on screen, we need to mention that in the default preview under pet adoption theme. What pet adoption theme is, we will get to know when we create an application or using Android Studio. So what this default preview outputs is this. You get a small box with a white background, and that will be Bart, my name is Koda. The text is contained in there. What do you do after that? You put in some kind of information, right? You just don't want the name of the pet. So we are going to make another function so that it can be reused. This will be pet information. So it will give some description about the pet. Here we are entering a text description, which will be I am 3 years old and I like to bark. Now, an important part about keeping more than one elements of user interface together is that you need to tell Jetpack Compose what kind of arrangement will be there for these multiple text properties. So you cannot just simply define two texts like pet information and pet name and then expect them to be arranged properly. No, that won't happen. They will come on top of each other and it will be a jumble of words. Nobody will understand anything. So what we do in order to arrange them properly is use layouts. There are two fundamental layouts which are very, very intuitive. We should actually thank Google for making these layouts very intuitive. They are rows and columns. These layouts can be used to surround your functions. Once a layout surrounds your function, every user interface element within the scope of a layout will be arranged according to the predefined properties of that layout. Now, since we add these, we'll probably be using a column, of course, if we need to display two elements, one below the other. So if we use a column properly to define the name and information of the pet, we will get an output that looks something like this. First will be Bark, my name is Koda. Then, instead of being exactly on top of it, due to the column property, we get the next sentence below the first one. So let's have a look at the column layout. We will declare another function which will assemble the column for us. Of course, we know that this is supposed to be in a column, but the compiler does not know it automatically. We have to tell the compiler very explicitly that, okay, I need a column, I need some elements inside the column, and inside that column, I need the elements arranged in this order. The first element will be my pet name. What is the pet name? The pet name is a function that contains some text element. Then I also need pet information. And pet information is also a function that I have already defined and it contains a text element. So this is how we will arrange our user interface. This function that we just defined with a layout is the only function that then you need to call into default preview. Keep in mind that it is good programming practice to not call too many functions in a single place. Like if you make 5 functions and then call all 5 of them in default preview, you might yourself get confused about which function goes where and the arrangement. So it is often good to club these functions into a single function that defines the layout, and then this function will be called in the default preview. All right. If you do that, your preview is going to give the same output as we observed last time. And that will be it. This is your basic idea about layouts in Jetpack Compose. Now, we will discuss a little bit about stuff apart from strings or text, because simply using words everywhere will make a very boring application. You need something like images, right? Where do you find those images? So when you open Android Studio, there is a tab under the project directory, which is known as resources. In resources, you can give different kinds of objects like images, like icons, like your strings or sentences, so on and so forth. A lot of things will be there in resources, and we will be using these extensively, which is a part of the XML. Now, how do you access these resources? These resources can be accessed using a very, very intuitive class called R. R for Ruby, R for resources. This class is very helpful for us. It contains the ID numbers of almost every resource that you will ever use in your Android Studio project. Be it the resources that already are present by default in Android Studio, or be it the resources that you create using the Android Studio interface, or the images that you download and insert as drawables into the interface. Everything will be contained in this R class. Then you can go ahead and extract all these resources R, then followed by which directory or folder within R your resource is in. So if you want an image, for example, if you remember, our dog's name was Coda. So R dot drawable. What a drawable is something that the Android user interface can display in the form of an image or an icon. So that drawable that you essentially draw as a human instead of writing. So r.drawable.coda means within the R class, there is an object called drawable. Within the drawable object, there is another object called coda. And this is the object that I want to display on my screen right now. This is how the compiler understands it. How do you use this information to call the image of Coda? We will do that by creating another function called pet image. Of course, we need to remember that you have to type @composable on top of this image so that the compiler understands this is a part of Jetpack Compose. You define the function, and within this, you create a constant. Remember that this is, of course, going to be an image that does not change because your dog's face won't change throughout the course of the application. So you're going to declare a constant over here using VAL instead of VAR. And what this VAL will contain is something called a painter resource. A painter resource is the entity which loads a drawable image and takes the ID of that image as the parameter. How does that happen? So what you do is val image is equal to a new painter resource in which the ID of this resource is r.drawable.coda. This will give us the value of the image within the image variable. Now we can go ahead and declare an image function. This image function is a pre-built composable function. You don't need to define it again. You only have to pass values into the function. This will ask for two values. The first one is, of course, painter. The painter is the image that we just now created using painter resource. So you will pass that as an argument, and then you will type a content description. Why do you need the content description? Does anybody have an idea? Have you worked with it before, or would anybody like to guess why you need a content description? You can answer in the chat if you'd like. Okay, Leva says it's for background display. You're a little bit on the right track, but not exactly correct. Try again. Others, do you have any idea? I see no more guesses. Well, I'll move ahead with the general answer that we have. We know that we understand images and audios very well because most of us have been blessed with good eyesight and good hearing, the sense of touch and everything. However, not everybody is as fortunate as us. We need to consider and be fair to all those people who have either impaired vision, weak eyesight, or hearing loss, or probably the sense of touch is weak, and some people won't be able to understand immediately what is being in the application. For example, if someone is visually impaired, partially blind, or even completely blind, they will require a text to speech output. Like the phone needs to describe in words or using audio what the content of the application is. This is where your content description comes into play. Everything that is text or string can be translated or read out by the text to speech entity. However, an image cannot be directly understood by the text to speech. So we need to provide a good description of what this image is about. And that description is what will be read out or produced as an audio to help increase our accessibility of the application. So all types of users, irrespective of whether they have any weak eyesight or maybe a hearing loss, they will be able to understand what the application has contained in it, whether it's an image, whether it's type of your audio or something. So your descriptions will allow accessibility. All right, let's move on. This is actually a very important part which will come into discussion when we create XML files as well. This is a property, and you get warnings if you don't add content description. That is a feature of Android Studio. It is very helpful as well. Now, we create a call or invocation of this function in the pet adoption information. Remember, we had created a column layout before. You should not forget that. This column layout is where we will invoke our pet image function. So we will include our pet image in the final column. Now, what will this display? Let us have a look at it. Here is our final display, which will be an image of the pet followed by the name of the pet and its description. Luckily, this time, the image of the pet fits the screen very well. However, it won't be the case always. So we will come across different functions and something called modifiers, which we will use to arrange these images to fit into the screen of our application properly. That won't be a problem. We will look into everything step by step. So let us get started. I request all of you, if you have not visited this website, kindly go ahead and visit this website and also turn on your Android Studio because we will be diving into development soon. Let me share my screen again and we will get into building stuff. In the meanwhile, if anybody has any questions, please do go ahead and type them in the Q&A section. We will address those shortly. All right, here we are. Let me just paste this link into the chat box as well so that everybody is on the same page. Just a minute. Will we get the PPT? All right, I can upload the PPT on the event page. The page through which you have joined this event, we will be uploading the PPT there, so don't worry about it. Of course, there is a lot better description of the content of the PPT through the pathways. I would personally recommend you going through the pathway instead of going through the PPT. Of course, I do understand that the PPT has some descriptions which will not be there in the pathways. So I'll try my best to upload the PPT over there as well through on the event page. But I do highly recommend going through the pathways instead because they have detailed descriptions of whatever has been discussed in the PPT. I will still upload the PPT online, so don't worry about it. All right. My video buffers most. Well, I am also sitting in the hostel, so I can't do much about that. I believe there is a little bit problem from my side as well. The internet here is a little slow, and that often happens in online meetings, so we can't avoid that. I'm really sorry about that. We'll try our best to keep up with the net connection. I believe my screen should be visible now. The build a basic layout pathway number 3 of unit number 1. I'll paste the link over here. This is the link. And what? Oh, just a minute. I'll paste it in YouTube Live as well. All right. So here you see that we have a lot of content that they've given. There is a video which I recommend that you watch. There are code labs, including the designing of a birthday card application. You can video, or you can simply code along with the video on Android Studio. We are not going to do that right now. What we are going to do is we are going to go into Practice Compose Basics and go into a code lab. I'll just describe the basic structure. I have already completed this one, so it takes me to the last panel. But of course, all of us will be taken to the first panel. We have to go through the instruction. We will be explained about the XML file that I was talking about before, extended markup language. So let me just open up Android Studio and show you what that looks like. Android Studio will, of course, take a little bit of time to load up. So we'll wait for a few minutes while that happens. And I'll read through the description first. As I was talking about, they have mentioned the use of modifiers. This is what will be required to arrange your content properly. Some images may actually fill the entire screen while you actually want them to fill maybe only like 20% or only be as a small icon. So modifiers are what we will use to change those properties of images. And there are a few other things that we'll be discussing. There are 3 applications given in this section. We will mostly focus on the third application, which is the Compose quadrant, because it is something that contains a small description of the different types of composables. And I'd like you all to understand in general what these mean. So we'll go ahead and understand the UI specifications that they have given. A UI specifications document is often created before starting with work so that your development process becomes easier. In most professional environments, you will find this document. So what happens here is we get an understanding of what we are supposed to make. Here they have stated 50% of the screen width needs to be taken up by one column. Therefore, of course, the other 50% will be taken up by the other column. We also see that there is not just 2 columns, but also 2 rows of data. And these rows are again 50% of the screen height each. So 2 rows into 2 columns, using basic math, you can understand this is 2 into 2, which will give us 4 sections. And these 4 sections will, of course, be called quadrants, which gives us the name of the activity, compose quadrant. All right, so the specifications for each of the quadrants is given here, numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first one is set the entire quadrant, start, top, and then bottom, to a 16 dp padding. If you've worked with the hypertext markup language, CSS, and JavaScript for web development before, you know what padding is. And for those of you who do not know what padding is, it is like the empty space that you keep between the extreme edges of your device and the beginning of the content. So you leave a little bit of, I can say, empty space as a border, and that will be your padding, an internal border. Now, the second specification they are told is center align over the content both vertically and horizontally. Format the first text composable in bold, set it to 16 dp padding bottom. All right, so we see here that text composable or other types of, we can call them headings or titles, will be in bold, and then they will have some extra spacing below them. And set the second text composable to a default font size. So you don't actually need to specify the default font size. It happens automatically because, I mean, the word default means it happens automatically. Then the resources that you will use are the following colors. Android imports all these colors through the color class, COLOR, and then you just use them as objects in your code. So you won't have to particularly go through rigorous importing activity. The one thing that I would recommend you to do is, I'll demonstrate when I go through Android Studio. The other suggestion that they've given is strings that will be used. These are the strings that we will be using to display on our screen. References is a section that helps us understand entities that we have not yet come across, but we will be using in this function. So this is what we will be using. Let us stop sharing the website. I hope all of you have visited this website and are on the same page with me. Am I right? I just start sharing my screen through Android Studio now. That would be a window, right? Yeah, this is a window. So I share my screen. All right, so this is what my previous project looks like. This is not related to today's project. This was a Thursday trivia, which we'll probably have you all doing at some point. So we'll just have a look at how we create a new project. What I'm going to do right now is going to close this project. I hope my screen is still visible, or has it stopped being shared? Oh, okay. It has stopped being shared. I'll share it again. No worries. Yeah. So the screen should be visible now again, right? So we'll go ahead and click New Project. Within this new project, which screen is visible? Yes, it is the correct screen. There are different type of templates that you get to see, but we won't be going there. The template that we will focus on this time is an empty compose activity. There is also an option of using empty activity, but that will not have Jetpack Compose elements in it. But we need to work with Jetpack Compose, so we will use empty compose activity. You click next. You go ahead and change your application name. So I am going to change my name to Compose Quadrants, which is the name that they have suggested. I will choose a folder. I don't want it to be in Thursday Trivias. I simply want it to be in Android. I will create a new folder called Compose Quadrants. Also, I request everybody to make sure that you don't put a space in the name anywhere, be it the name of the folder, be it the name of your application. If you use a space, there might be some problems with your Android Studio path finding and processing. So it is better to avoid using spaces. You can use something like an underscore in place of a space if you want to separate these words. But I am fine with using capital letters, the camel case, so I'll do that. So I just created a new folder. I went into that folder. That will be my save location. The language for Jetpack Compose is automatically Kotlin, so I'll choose that. The lowest version of Android that I want my application to be compatible with, I choose it to be Lollipop. You can of course choose it to be just a second. So Lollipop will allow you to have 98.8 devices, 8% devices compatible. If you choose an Android version that is higher than Lollipop, say maybe Android 9, your compatibility percentage goes lower because of course there are fewer devices which are compatible with a later newer version of Android. The older devices will be existing which will not be compatible with latest versions. So it is better to choose a somewhat old version so that you get compatibility. However, if you need to deal with some security related issues, or you want your application to be safe from hackers, you might want to go with a little bit of the later versions of Android so that hackers are not very quick with hacking into your application. So security is more stable. I will simply go ahead with the 5th version of Android because this is a small application for test purposes. I'm not using it in production. I click finish, and has the screen stopped being shared? Yes, it has stopped. I share it again. We go into the application now. All right, so on top of the application, you see the Gradle Sync is in progress. This is something that happens when you create an Android application and you see there is main activity.kt written on top. Now, .kt means a Kotlin file. So the option that we had seen in the beginning, what language do you want to use? This is the language that we want to use, Kotlin. And Android has automatically established that we will be writing our code in an Kotlin file called main activity. All right, so we will have to wait a little bit while all of the Gradle project gets synchronized, indexing is done, and we get our project directory ready. By that time, I will address any questions if you have any. So feel free to post your questions in the chat, in the Q&A section. If you want to invite anybody, any of your friends to the session, this would be the best time to do that. Okay, some packages are getting installed after I click on finish. Yes, of course. That will happen if this is the first time that you're using an empty compose activity, or if there are some updates to your compose libraries. All right. If this is the first time, that is going to take a little bit more time than what my Gradle Sync will take. And that is no problem. It will install some of the dependencies that need to exist so that your compose application runs properly. There is no problem. Just ensure that your device has enough space for all these installations to take place. All right, if there are any other questions, please do go ahead. Yeah, thanks, Prashant. All right, I actually have a question for you. How many of you solved the pathway number 1 practice questions that we had discussed in the previous session? Did you all solve it or not? There were, I think, some 6 questions. All right, one should just solve them. Apart from the quiz, Prashant, through the pathways, there was a section in which there were Kotlin practice questions. All right, that's great. Because those questions will help you understand the fundamentals of Kotlin, so it is very go through them at least once. Great. Yeah, so we see that my Gradle build is almost complete. I see that the project directory structure is available. Currently, I will stay in the Android directory structure. The preview, as you can see, is not available in the beginning. You will have to build and refresh it. I don't want to do that right now because I'm just starting to build my application. I don't want to see what is going on. Of course, you can do that if you want. If you've not seen the default preview once, what it will do is it will display hello $name, and $name here will be Android. So it displays hello Android. All right. So what we have been asked to do is look at 4 quadrants. So how we will be doing these 4 quadrants is we'll be creating one column and one row, and we'll be adding 2 elements of text in both these columns and rows. So let us have a look at the idea or structure of the program behind these. I have a little bit of code already written with me because, of course, there is a time constraint. I'm really sorry that we already have reached today's time limit. There are only about 4 minutes left. I will share, of course, the code with you as well. It is already available on GitHub, so don't worry about that. What we will do, first of all, is we will define a column and a row structure. So we will do that in our new function called the application function. So we'll make a at composable. This will be function my compose quadrant app. It won't take any parameters for now. I just want to define the structure. It will have one column. And this column, okay, I will need to import the column if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it has not yet imported the column, so I'll have to import that first. All right. So we'll do that. We'll just wait for it to give me the suggestion of importing columns. If it does not, create a function column. No, it's not a function. It should be a widget. It should give me the suggestion of importing the column. Change, convert, remove wrapper. All right, it is taking a little bit of time to import the column. We'll go ahead with the structure instead of worrying about the column for now. We know that, all right, so it has understood that this one is supposed to be a row. Is this drop-down list visible to you through the screen share, the one that I'm getting? If I type in row, it looks a little bit like this. If it is not visible, I'll try to send a screenshot. Here is the screenshot visible though. I'm not sure if I can send photos through the chat. I can't. All right. Okay, so it shows me autocomplete suggestions for the row. This is actually exactly what I want. If you look at the description on the left side, it says androidx.compose.foundation.layout. So I know that this is the layout row which I want. So I choose this layout row, I press enter, and here it is. But we also know that we need 2 rows, not just one. So I create another row. And this column, if compose, yes. So Android Compose has finally realized that I want a column. So I create a column over here. So this will be my layout for the application. One column which contains 2 rows. Great. What do we do after this? After this, we are going to create a function which displays something like a card, let us say. So within that card, we will display our information. We create another at composable function, which will be display info. Let us keep this name. In display info, we want to display stuff like the title. Yeah, title was the part. So this will be a text value, if I'm not wrong. Then this text will contain text is equal to, let us say we take title as an input. This will be a string input. So we take an input. All right. Then I want the title to have, do I want the title to have a color? Let us keep the color default because they have not specified anything. Oh yes, we want one title to be bold if I'm not wrong. So the font weight is equal to, do we keep it bold? Yeah, we do keep it bold. Let's do that. So font weight is equal to um, font weight dot bold. This is another characteristic that we have defined, so that's good. Then we have a padding that we need to define. So that will be modifier is equal to modifier the class dot padding. All of the padding, if I remember correctly, is supposed to be 16 dp. Let us just check through the description in the compose layout. What have they asked us to do? Yes, the padding is supposed to be 16 dp all around. So we are doing it right. All right. So the text that we have defined over here is in good hands. Oh, 1 minute. The text padding is supposed to be padding bottom only. There is supposed to be a column which needs to have an overall padding. So let us do that as well. We'll define another column over here and we'll take this text into this column, and this column will have a modifier. Modifier is equal to modifier dot padding 16 dot pp all around. Okay, this is done. Now, what else can we do with this? Our first text has been written properly. Our second, okay, apart from this, we need another text input. So we'll do that as well. So we need another text input. This text will be our description, let us say, and we will take in description also a string value, and we will say modifier is equal to modifier dot does the text at the bottom, oh, the text at the bottom does not need to have a padding. That was only for the title. I remember it now. What we need to do here, however, is to align the text. So this will be text align. Text align is alignment dot justify, if I'm not, oh no, not internet. That'll be text align dot justify. Great. So this is a function that should be all right. Let us just have a look at our row. I will simply call this display info. Our title string will be, let us say, test title, and description would be test description. All right. I call this function instead of calling greeting. It was, I believe the function was compose quadrant app. So compose quadrant application through the default preview. I go into the split layout now. If I press build and refresh, it should start working. Let us wait a minute and see what this output. So 1 minute. I have to update the same thing over here. I'm very sorry. We'll have to write that over here. Compose quadrant. All right. All right, the preview has been generated. It is a small. All right, we have one preview over here of one single column along with the description. So this is what our default preview outputs for now. If I go ahead and display info again, this will be a control D, I believe. This will be test number 2 and test number 2. All right. Then I do the same thing over here. Control, no, not this. If I do this, control C, control V, and control V again, and I say this, I run this. Let us see what this looks like. If this turns out to be the final answer, we will. Yep, yep, this is it. Of course, right now it is not arranged properly because we are running out of time and I am not able to get into the arrangement of everything properly. But now you have a general idea of how we are going to work with columns. So something I'd like to add in order to quickly try to get these arrangements proper. I'll just see if this works. We are good to go for at least right now. Modifier dot fill max width over here, and in the column I will write modifier dot um, let us go with weight 1f. Now 1f means one fraction. So one fraction of the screen will be dedicated to this particular row. Let us see if this works. If this works, we have a general idea of how our application will look like before adding all the beautification parts of it. So hopefully this is what the output will look like in the future. Let's wait for it to load. Yep. So this has taken up one part of the screen. There were, am I supposed to create two different columns if I'm not wrong? I think I might have to. All of this is stored in one single column right now, so I might have to take stuff into a different column later. Though in general, now we understand how Compose works. The little cheeky modification that I tried to do did not work this time. I leave that up to you. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so I won't be able to make the entire application with you all right now. But there are 3 applications that we need to do, and all of the solutions are also given with GitHub links to those. But I do highly recommend that you try and solve this pathway on your own. If you, of course, run into some problems, get in touch with me. And we have with us, are you still here, Roshni? Let me just give you presenter permission so you can speak with us. Yeah, Roshni, am I audible to you? All right. Yeah, Roshni, take your time, don't worry. Do we have a meeting tomorrow as well? No, Prashant, we won't have a meeting tomorrow. However, we will have sessions next Thursday and Friday. I will be updating these events on the community page. The link to the community page is, of course, available in the chat already. And this is where we'll be having Roshni join us. She is our application development lead for this year. Welcome, Roshni.
Yes, hello everyone.
Yeah, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody, Roshni?
Okay, so I'm like the lead of Android development in GDSC, and I'll be explaining you all about the app, how to make apps and interact through Kotlin. So in the next week, so yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Roshni, for the short and quick introduction. Roshni is who you all will be working with next week on Thursday and Friday to learn a lot more about Jetpack Compose. So we'll be learning about more about the layouts. We'll be developing a little bit more uh, larger applications, and of course we'll have all of you create one application for us towards the end of the course, which will go to GDSC India. Hopefully, one of us does succeed in making the front page. That is not the goal, however. The goal is to learn, and I am very thankful for Roshni to having taken up the initiative of going through the advanced parts of the course for us and then imparting that knowledge to all of us. I request all of you to wish Roshni the best of luck for next week, and we'll meet you again on Thursday. If you'd like to pitch in, Roshni, feel free to do
Yeah.
so.
So yeah, thank you everyone. I'll be continuing everything from Thursday, and I look forward to our meeting. And we're going to make some great apps together. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. With this, we come to the end of this session. Have exceeded our time limit a little bit. I am sorry for that. Um, However, I do recommend that all of you please go through pathway number 3 of unit number 1. You will get to know a lot more about Compose layouts and how to build some static applications like birthday cards and greeting cards. Of course, there is one application that I personally recommend all of you to make. You will find that in the practice sessions. That is the business card application. So even if you don't make it like a business card, let me just show it on screen before we end this session for the day. Um, Here, this one. So this is what your business card will look like. All right. Oh, it's on the first page then, I believe. Yeah. So it will really be very good if you create an application, even if it is just a one-page application, a static one-page application, which describes yourself. It can be a part of your portfolio as an Android developer, even as a beginner. So this is a highly recommended application for you all to make, and you can actually share the links of these applications to everybody as well. It will be an installable application, of course, but putting it on Play Store will be a little expensive, so you'll have to be ready with a link to download it or the APK file. But it is a very good beginner's project. So I highly recommend everybody to at least make this one application for your own. All right, on that note, I'd not take too much more of your time. Nearing the end of the session, end of the extra time during the session. So I take your leave and wish you all the very best for pathway number 3 of unit number 1. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We'll meet you again next week on Thursday and Friday at the same time. Yeah.